Welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! The Review Series. I couldn't help it. I had to put out one more video for Phaorah's Memories. I didn't want to overwhelm you with so much information in Part 4, because in that part, I covered both the conclusion of Yugioh vs. Phaorah, as well as the resolution of the arc overall. This video was mainly just going to be me summing up my overall feelings of this arc, and delivering my final verdict. As such, it's going to be kind of brief, or at least I'm hoping it will be. I don't know, haven't gotten into the analysis yet. But without further ado, let's get into my final analysis of Phaorah's Memories. As mentioned previously, this is one of my favorite arcs in any anime, and it's not just because of the time travel aspect. I find this arc strikingly similar to Waking the Dragons, only the titular roles are reversed. Atem is the damsel in distress, so to speak, and he's the one who needs saving. Yugi and the others are the ones that go to save him. When we arrive in the ancient past, we're greeted by an entirely new setting that, while unfamiliar to us, also feels welcoming due to the flashbacks that we've gotten in the past seasons. The culture was very fascinating, and I think it was handled with as much care and respect as possible. Heck, I'd even say that about the slavery scene where Thief King Phaorah is first introduced. Of course, seeing that now, it's kind of an archaic thing to watch, but I'll give it this. Like I stated in Part 1, it is historically accurate. Since slave labor is how the Egyptians got most of their stuff done. We learned so much more about Atem in this story. We actually got a look at his ancient past, and we also got to be in the midst of a grand battle, which was well worth the wait. Atem isn't just a pharaoh, he's a king, and a chosen one at that, able to wield the Egyptian gods. And it's clear that he cares for his friends and inner circle, especially Priest Seto at the end when he hands him the kingship. He also shows a lot of emotional distress as his friends are all killed off by Zork one by one. But at the end, when faced with inevitable death, Atem stands his ground, and is like a captain with his ship. If he's gonna die fighting for what he believes in and for what he loves, the Egyptian people. We learn a lot more about Priest Seto as well, and as mentioned before, he probably gets the most development out of all the members of the inner circle. Maybe a close runner-up would be Mahad, but we'll get to him later. We don't really learn much about Priest Seto at the beginning of the storyline, but I think where his character really starts to shine is when Phaorah arrives on the scene. At first, he wants to harness the power of Phaorah's dragon, but only after she's well rested and well nurtured. And there's clearly some attraction between the two, especially when Priest Seto begins referring to her as the maiden with the blue eyes. Phaorah herself, well, she puzzles me. The reason why is because we don't really get that much on her in terms of backstory. Now don't get me wrong, when it comes to the original manga, I don't blame Takahashi at all for this. He was ill at the time and thus had absolutely no choice but to cut their story short. And clearly TV Tokyo did what they could to fill in the gaps, which, again, are nowhere near perfect, but they're a valiant effort. But what puzzles me about Phaorah is that she has no modern-day counterpart. Now, symbolically, you could argue that she's the Blue Eyes White Dragon incarnate, similar to how Mahad is the Dark Magician incarnate. But in my opinion, it would have been really cool if she had both a reason for existing within the card game itself, as well as a modern-day counterpart, maybe even to interact with the rest of the cast. I'm gonna do this little fan story here, but consider this for a modern counterpart take on Phaorah. So, Phaorah is working for Kaiba Corp, and she's drawn to Seto because of the romantic feelings that the two shared in the past. But Seto, as we've already seen, doesn't know who she is, or what connection they have, nor does he believe it when it's actually brought up. But Phaorah's memories of the ancient past are eventually jogged when she sees Seto summoning the Blue Eyes White Dragon. She has a conversation with Seto about it, And in the process, she actually starts melting away his icy demeanor, and their connection is made stronger as the series progresses. Until, I don't know, she's either captured or even killed off by Phaorah in the modern day. After this, Seto realizes what he lost, has a lot of flashbacks to Priest Seto and Kisara in the past, and decides to dedicate the 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons that he holds in his deck to her. One for each of the 3 millennia that has passed since Atem's reign. That would give Seto a substantial connection with his cards, like Yugi has with the Dark Magician, but on top of that, it would also just add another layer of tragedy to his character, as he was so close to falling in love with this beautiful girl, only for tragedy to take her away. I don't know, what do you guys think? Maybe Takahashi-sensei can do a better job, and I'm no storyteller, I'm just a reviewer. Yugi actually proves himself. Not only does he come to Atem's aid without hesitation, but he also defeats Phaorah in a one-on-one duel when the odds are stacked against him, which again was extremely satisfying to watch, and shows that Yugi can just hold his own just fine. Joey, Tristan, and Taya are mostly there as support and comedic relief. They're welcome relief, but they're comedic relief nonetheless. The only character out of the 3 that actually acts out of character would be Tristan, and even then, that's when Phaorah takes control of his mind. Ahad is the Dark Magician incarnate, and that's pretty much it, unfortunately for him. Other than the fact that he sealed away his power, we really don't learn that much more about him. Mana is also his apprentice magician, kind of like his Dark Magician girl. Mana herself is the Dark Magician girl incarnate, who struggles to make her magic work. However, she gets better at it as the story continues, and eventually, she actually summons the Dark Magician girl, and it's pretty much her go-to monster for the rest of the arc. Now on to the villains, beginning with the lowest of the low, and the one whom I utterly despise, Akhenaten. The fact that he's Priest Seto's father is a shocking moment, both to the character of Priest Seto himself, and to the audience. But Akhenaten himself is just a selfish schemer, and a psychotic madman, especially with what he does to torture Kisara. When he morphs into Magus, though, he kinda loses all of the character that he had, what little there was of it, and he just becomes your stereotypical mustache-twirling evil guy. So it's kind of a fall from grace. Granted, it's a deserved fall, but it's a fall from grace nonetheless. As I stated in part 4, Phaorah's plan was masterfully executed, and the only reason he lost at the game was because Atem remembered his name at the last possible second. You can't really get much better in terms of stress and tension than that. We got to see exactly why Phaorah is so evil, and it's mostly due to Akhenaten's greed. Because Akhenaten was the one who burned down his village, and Akhenaten had nothing to do with it. Now, Akhenaten did eventually take the blame for it, but again, the fact that Akhenaten himself is the true culprit shifts the blame from the Pharaoh onto Akhenaten in my books. The reveal that Zork and Phaorah are one and the same is a startling revelation, and it completely changes how I view his character in the past seasons. It even makes me question some of his past actions, like in Battle City, when he only wanted the Pharaoh's power for himself. Granted, in Battle City, he didn't know about Atem's limitless power until Merrick tipped him off, but again, I'm willing to bet that that was all part of his plan. Zork himself doesn't really have much in terms of personality or backstory. The best we get is that he created the Shadow Realm, and that he was created when the Millennium items themselves were. I find it interesting that it's the name Atem that brings Zork down. In fact, the root Tem in the name literally means both completion and mankind. The At is an Egyptian word for father. As mentioned in part 1, the voice acting is amazing. Everyone pretty much gives it their all, from Eric Stewart, who pulls off a really good, albeit fake, British accent as Priest Seto, to Dan Green, who continues to excel as Atem and Yugioh respectively, and to Ted Lewis, who once again just poured his heart into this performance and really gave me goosebumps and gave me chills at certain points. So, if any of you are watching this, well done, my friends. Also, as mentioned in part 1, there was an inconsistency when it came to Yami Bakura's character design, but it was a short-lived one, so it really didn't hurt the overall quality. There were also some confusing line reads, like how Priest Seto would drain the Nile River until a Tem is found, and again, there was even that pointless duel between present Seto and Bakura at the start of the arc. But none of those ever encouraged me to dock any points from my score. So, with that out of the way, the final verdict for the Pharaoh's Memories is the highest possible 5 out of 5 that I can give. It's an amazingly written story, has deep fleshed out characters, has incredible stakes, has amazing motivation behind its key players, an interesting premise, pretty much everything you would want in a good story. So, now that the characters have gone back to the future, we finally get to sit back and watch the greatest Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel of all time, the ceremonial battle, which we will be covering in extensive detail next time. Look forward to it soon, guys. God bless, and may the heart of the cards guide you.